What is up, YouTube? This is Hypergun, your Chap Cat, back again for another video. This time, we're going to be doing a very unique countdown, one I've been wanting to do for quite some time. As you know, we all enjoy the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime out there. And one of the big things that everyone tends to enjoy about it, one of the things we cannot possibly escape from, the thing we cannot have a true Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime without, is the duels. This time, we're going to be counting down my top 10 favorite duels out of everything in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Animated series. Now, when I say a duel, I do specifically mean within the game of Duel Monsters, so anything outside of that does not count. Dungeon Dice Monsters doesn't count. Capsule Monsters doesn't count. Final Duel between Atem and Bakura doesn't count. Has to be with the Duel Monsters card game. That's the only thing that counts as a duel. But that kind of goes without saying. And without any further ado, let's get started. Kicking off our countdown, we actually go to Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, specifically towards the end where it actually stopped getting dubbed, so we have to go into the sub for this. And this is the duel between Leo, Luna, and Jack, all against Aporia. Now, for those of you guys who do not know, Aporia is a combination of the three characters who used the Mechlord Emperors prior to, and during the final battle of the dub, they all combined into this single entity known as Aporia. However, in the later part of that season, which was never dubbed, they end up having to face Aporia again, and this task comes down to Leo, Luna, and Jack. Now, the reason that I love this duel isn't even necessarily because of the duel itself, but rather what happens in the middle of it. Spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen this. Leo, in the middle of it, as he is almost caused everyone else to lose, finds out that he is the unknown 6th signer, and has the symbol of the Crimson Dragon's heart. With that, he's able to finally create the signer dragon that we have been seeing hinted at in Season 1, which was Livestream Dragon, the evolved version of his Power Tool Dragon. And with it, he's able to bring back his fallen comrades, or nearly fallen comrades, and help claim victory in the duel against Aporia. So, like I said, it wasn't even really the duel itself so much was just that moment of empowerment for Leo, someone who did contribute to the series, but really didn't have an ultimate purpose other than just kind of being that side support character. So to finally see him really shine through and become a signer, it was one of the coolest things I'd ever seen in my life. So for that, it earns a spot on my number 10 spot. Anyway, number 9. Next up, we take a step back over to Yu-Gi-Oh! GX for my number 9 favorite duel between Jaden and Zane at the end of Season 1 for Zane's graduation duel. Now, this duel was hyped up big time. Everyone had wanted to see what would happen in the rematch between Jaden and Zane since their first duel where Zane kicked his sorry ass. And in this one, it lived up to the hype big time. Now, it was a little off in the beginning because Jaden, having already faced Zane, realized he couldn't play the way he had been. He had to play with his head instead of his heart. Unfortunately for him, that's not how Jaden duels. Jaden needed to kind of realize himself that that style of dueling is not his own, and therefore it actually hindered him instead of helping him. So after a quick meal of rice balls, or onigiri for those of you who actually speak Japanese, he was able to manage to come back and give a positively blistering comeback of a duel. Now, the outcome of this is actually rather unexpected. It appears that Zane has managed to outmatch him in the end, also spoilers, and he's passing on the mantle of best duelist to Jaden. He recognizes that even though he's still technically a freshman, Jaden does possess the necessary skills to become the next best at Duel Academy. And, in order to prove this, Jaden makes sure he goes down fighting, and activates his last trap card, Final Fusion, which causes both players to take damage equal to the combined attack of both fusion monsters, which at that point was well enough to kill both of them 4 times, at least. So, It was an absolutely amazing comeback for a draw of all things, but it was still really cool just seeing him not only accept the mantle, but take it a step further and say, I'm not just going to do what you think I am, I'm going to go beyond and really prove to you that I am the best. And so, I thought it was a really cool way to end season one, and for that, it earns a number 9 spot on my list. Moving on to number 8. Now, despite how much everyone might shit talk it, Zexal actually did have a couple of good duels. However, there was really only one that caught my list, and it unsurprisingly occurred in Zexal 2, the one that sucked infinitely less compared to Zexal 1 and Zexal 2. And it doesn't even involve anyone that you would think. This is actually one of those side duels in a filler episode to help establish someone as opposed to a main story duel, which is a bit odd considering most of these are more relevant duels, but this one just really caught my attention, and honestly, it is easily my favorite duel out of the entirety of Zexal. Hence the only entry for it. But this duel actually takes place between Rio Castle and Lotus, some random person that they decided to assign for Rio's to kick. But the reason I like this is because when Rio was established, she was Shark's younger sister. And to that extent, Shark was kind of overly protective of her. However, she was determined to prove that she could actually hold her own quite nicely. She even ended up becoming one of like those star idol characters in a school that you tend to see in a lot of anime. That's just jack of all trades, master of just as many. And in her case, dueling is no exception. She was challenged by the head of the botany club or garden club or whatever the hell you want to call it. And at that point, the Barian army was invading, trying to infect people with the chaosic seas monsters or whatever you want to call it. And so Rio, instead of being deterred by this, actually managed to pull out, and it was annihilation, if anything. It wasn't even like she was ever lost her cool for a second. She was in control the entire time. And so, for that reason, I have to give it to the younger of the Castle siblings. Moving on to number 7. For the number 7 spot on our list, we actually need to go all the way back to the beginning, over to the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. Specifically, in Season 4, Waking the Dragons, one of my personal favorites. And in this, there was one duel in particular that really stood out to me, one that I always liked just because of the constant back and forth of it and just the really cool cards that were used. This duel was between Joey Wheeler and Valen of the Orichalcos people. Now, the reason I like this one is, first of all, Valen was just awesome. Of the Orichalcos wielders, he was my personal favorite. More than Raphael, more than whoever the hell Kaiba fought, and more than Darts. I always just thought he was the most drawn out, the coolest one of them, and his armor cards were just insane. I so badly wish that that was an actual archetype. But I've already talked about that in my top 5 archetypes need to be real. Another reason I like him is because he sort of forms this sort of a pseudo love triangle between him, Joey, and Mai. Even though there's really nothing to that, it was still kind of cool to see someone sort of competing for Mai's interest. And Joey put up a hell of a duel on his end too, even creating several of his own armor cards, also giving us Lord of the Red. And I have to admit, between the 2 new ritual monsters we've gotten for Red Eyes, I think I like Lord of the Red a lot more. So, for introducing a bunch of cool new cards, giving us a badass duel, and some amazing characters to do it, I have to give Joey and Valen's duel a number 7 spot. Let's go ahead and move on to the last one of the bottom half, number 6. Rounding off the bottom half of my list, we have our first entry from the newest installment of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise, Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. Now, there's been a lot of really cool duels in this one, and it was not easy to pick my favorites amongst this. However, for the number 6 spot, I had to give it to Yuya versus Reiji. Now, this isn't the first one. This isn't the first duel between a rival character and the main protagonist, and it's certainly not the last. However, this is easily one of my favorites. Now, normally when we have these duels between the protagonist and the rival character, it ends up being where the main protagonist will usually win in those duels. However, this one took a rather unexpected turn. It actually had it where Yuya actually lost. Well, technically. During the duel, it was pretty back and forth, at least at first glance. In reality, Reiji was kind of dominating the entirety of the duel. And at the end, he was about to win, this close to claiming victory. However, an emergency came up and he was forced to leave. He gave the duel to Yuya, so technically Yuya won that duel. However, everyone who watched it, including Yuya, is perfectly aware of the true outcome of that duel. And it almost motivated Yuya to become a better duelist because of it, so he knew he wouldn't lose to Reiji again. And it served as a pretty good establishing point for both characters, and so for that reason, on top of just being really freaking awesome to watch, I really do have to give it the number 6 spot. But now we move on to the real meat of this list, the top 5, the best of the best. Let's get started. Number 5. Kicking off the number 5 spot, we go back to Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds for one of my personal favorite duels of all time. It takes place between old friends and new enemies, Yusei versus Kallen, or Kiryu if you watch it in Japanese. Now, the reason that I like this one, and this, just as clarification, is the final duel between them as Kallen is a Dark Signer. So, not the initial duel, and not the Rogue Town one, but the second one, if you will. The reason I like this one so much is because we actually get a little bit of depth into why Kiryu, or Kallen, sorry, I'm trying to be consistent with this name, but I just can't be. I watch it in both. The reason why Kallen hates Yusei so much, we get more into that through the flashbacks that occur. It paced up the duel nicely. It's got some really intense action, and I just love the Infernity archetype, so getting to see that in action is also kind of a pleasant little twist for me. And Yusei himself put up a very excellent duel, even ending it with one of the best but worst monsters of all time. What's it called? Majestic Star Dragon. Only bad because you need Majestic Dragon to summon it. Majestic Dragon's a piece of crap. But that aside, it's anime, so any card is good in the hands of a main character. And Yusei used it amazingly. I loved seeing the friendship between these two, both in the past and in the end of the duel. It was truly amazing to me, and it's one of very, very few moments in the anime where I'm actually able to like get a physically emotional reaction to it. I did tear up a little bit during that, I won't lie. So, for being able to do that, it has to have something good going for it, and that gives it the number 5 spot on my list. Now we move on to number 4. Feels like we were just here, but for number 4 we gotta go back to Arc 5 once again. Now, while I did love the duel between Yuya and Reiji, Yuya had a duel that for me just stood out a little bit more. And that one stands at the number 4 spot, Yuya versus Sawatari. Now, the reason I like this one, and again, I realized there were several of them, this one was the one that occurred during the Junior Youth Championship when Sawatari was using the Yosenjus. Truth be told, I do use Yosenjus in real life, and this duel is the reason why. I probably would not have cared about them in the slightest. I would have thought, going back to the hand, why would I care about that? But actually seeing how they worked and just, they looked so cool, and that just sold me on them from that point on. Plus, in this duel, we have something that doesn't happen very often. Now, the reason I enjoy so many of Yuya's duels is because he's what's known as an entertainment duelist, which means he doesn't just duel for the sake of dueling. He does it to entertain the masses in order to sort of put on a show. And he does an amazing job of it. He really draws in the crowd. Even me, as someone knowing I'm watching a cartoon show, still get drawn into it, just wondering what's going to happen, even though the ending is kind of inevitable. But Sawatari, who's kind of formed this sort of a pseudo-rivalry with Yuya, ended up sort of mimicking his entertainment duel style, and has continued to do that so far. So for this one instance, we actually had a sort of entertainment show-off to see who could entertain the crowd the most, who could build up the most hype and get everyone most involved and interacting with it. And it was just so cool to see that, because that's the reason I like watching Yuya duel. And now both of them are doing it? It was just so fun to watch that. You know, you had the Yosenjus and the Entermates, or Form Pals, because translations. And just going back and forth, both of them trying to stir the crowd into a frenzy of applause. It was just so much fun to watch. I could watch that duel forever, honestly. And So for that reason, that one earns the number 4 spot on my list. Moving on to number 3. Time to take another step back. We are heading over to GX again for my third favorite duel of all time. And once again, it features, you guessed it, Jaden. This time he's going up against his other rival character, Chaz. Now, this one was when this was after Chaz had already kind of left the first time and came back with the rival duel school sporting his trademark black jacket or blazer or whatever you want to call it. And at this point, this was his first time showing off the Ojama and the Armed Dragon set. We primarily saw the Armed Dragons, but we did still see a little bit of the Ojamas, which is kind of funny. And I just enjoyed that duel because it was so, again, back and forth. You had Chaz dominating with these badass Armed Dragon monsters, which I loved. They were some of my favorite amongst the level series. And then Jaden, who's just, being Jaden. He's having a blast with it. He's having so much fun trying to understand why Chaz isn't. And even trying to help him kind of learn a little bit of something that doesn't have to follow his brothers, who are kind of backseat dueling for him, if you will. And so it was just kind of fun to see these two go at it. Chaz is one of my personal favorite characters out of the series, and so it was kind of fun to see them go at it. It's always been one of my personal favorite duels. I just kind of enjoy watching the back and forth of it. So that earns it the number 3 spot on my list. Now we move on to number 2. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. At this point, these were the 2 hardest decisions I had to make. I already knew what my 2 top duels were going to be. Everything else was doomed to be, at best, number 3. But these 2, I had a legitimately, near impossible task before me to set them apart, because they're just leagues ahead of every other duel. I would put 10 through 3 maybe about here, and then 1 and 2 were, way up off screen. So, realize how much more I love these 2 duels compared to all the other ones I just said. Each of these individually beats the other 8 I've already named off. But you gotta start somewhere, and hard of a decision as it was, my number 2 spot, it takes place in 5Ds yet again. Another Signer duel, this one being between Jack and Carly. Now, the reason that I love this one so much, again, isn't even necessarily the duel itself, similarly to my first 5Ds pick, which was the 3-way duel against Aporia. But the reason I like this one so much is because it had sort of a background to it. And what I mean by that is they had spent some time setting up the relationship between Jack and Carly. Now, in the sub, it was more of a love as opposed to the dub, which is more just a really strong friendship. Since in the sub, they actually say they love each other during the duel. And the reason that this, to me, made such a big impact is because it really changed and defined each of them as a character. Before, Carly was just a cardboard cutout, crazy person, just the comic relief of the series. And then Jack was just a cardboard cutout of the asshole rival character. We'd seen him a million times before. But here we're seeing a different side to them. And just seeing Jack try and save Carly from the Dark Signers was really emotional for me. Remember how I said that the fight between Yusei and Colin actually got an emotional response out of me? This one got the strongest emotional response out of me I have ever felt watching this show. I think I actually may have cried a bit. I'm not kidding. I just love it so much. I love them as, a ship. Yes, I do ship. And just seeing the goodbye between them, where Carly says how much she believes in Jack, the sacrifice she makes at the end, all of it just came together so perfectly. And the duel was pretty good too, I'm not gonna lie. It was also pretty cool to watch. There were several key moments in there that just really blew my mind that either one of them would have done that. It was amazingly fun to watch. I love it. I can watch it over and over again and never get bored with it. And yet, there is one that stands above it. One duel that can stand on top as the best of the best. Time to find out what that is. There was really no competition with this one. This had to be my number 1 favorite duel. It so far holds the standing as the longest duel at a whopping 6 episodes long. and is by far one of the most hyped up in the entirety of this series runtime. It is, of course, in the original series, the fabled rematch between Yugi and Kaiba in the Battle City Finals. There was no way it couldn't be this one. As much as I love all the other duels, as much as I love the last one I said, and I praise that one to the heavens and back, this is the best of the best for so many reasons. One, it starts off with the Battle of the Gods. Just a frantic race to see who can get their god out first. And then, once they're out, the battle shifts to see whose god is stronger, who can dominate whose. Then we have that little brief intermission where we go back to ancient Egypt, but then once we get back, the real battle begins. What do you mean a real battle? We just had to battle the gods! Yes, but that wasn't all they had to offer. Next, it comes down to the true meat of the duel. Their boss monsters. The Dark Magician versus the Blue Eyes White Dragon. The duel that had even been prophesied on the ancient tablet that both Kaiba and Yugi had seen. The one that they saw in their ancient Egyptian flashback midway through the duel. And it came down to that. Just seeing the constant back and forth between these two. All the intense moves, the big monsters, the several cheating moves, I might add. But I'm willing to overlook it because the duel was just so awesome! I mean, how can you not love it? The king of games against the owner of Kaiba Corp, his greatest rival, arguably the best rival character in the series. I mean, how can you not love it? And for 6 episodes, they managed to keep the hype train going for 6 episodes. And I could watch the whole thing over and over again, all 6 in a row, happily. It's just that good of a duel. Just I could ramble on about this all day if I wanted to, but for your sakes, I'm going to keep the video brief. That's really all I got to say about it. It's such a good duel between 2 of the most popular characters in the entire series. It doesn't matter which part is your favorite. It doesn't matter which characters you like the best. You cannot deny that the ultimate duel between the King of Games, the original King of Games, and his most intense rival ever has got to be the best duel in the entire Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. Or can you? I leave it up to you now. Tell me, is my list right? Did I name all the good duels? Did I miss a good one? Is Yugi vs. Kaiba's epic rematch not the best of the best? Let me know down in the comments below. Of course, don't forget to also like and subscribe to my channel, as well as liking the Facebook page. And until next time, peace.